Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast. My name is Chris, and at very short notice, I've just got one person with me this evening, but his knowledge is good enough for two people. So tonight I am joined by Ross. Good evening to you, Ross.
Good evening.
And welcome back, of course. You made your debut 2 weeks ago, so had some very good offers for you, but we've decided to retain your services. So
No, you didn't.
well, you know, we had some offers.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they were good ones.
Exactly.
Thanks for coming on again, mate. Do appreciate it. And have to say, Danny was due to join us tonight, but he's had some very sort of last minute things plop up, and he's not able to be with us. So never mind. We'll still cover it. Now, before we launch into our English football topics and debates, I just want to let all of our listeners know, essentially, that we conducted a poll last week, and the results are in. We have concluded that our listeners are very much on the fence, which is always a good place to be, and they've decided that the majority vote, I think it was 38%, was that they were happy either way for us to either keep the Premier League in the main pod or ditch it and just have it here. So I've made the executive decision that we are going to have our English Premier League and English football talk on a Sunday night / Monday morning, and we will have our normal pod will just be European. So there we go, decision made. On we go. So let's talk English football tonight and get the Premier League looked at. Right, Ross. Let's start where we began the weekend on Saturday. Now there's probably too much to talk about in this game, so we'll skate over it. But 9 goals between Norwich City and Liverpool, and I'm going to sort of intersplice questions as we go through tonight, because we had some really good questions come in from our listeners as well. And we had a question come from, where is it? Let's see if I can find it. Oh no, that's not the right one. There it is. I found it. Right. How much joy? This is from Pigmund J. Hamkenstein. Now that's a name. If he's got a picture of a pig as his avatar. He says, how much joy should a Liverpool FC fan take out of a win in which they concede 4 goals to a newly promoted Norwich side? So what did you make of this game, and what do you make of that question?
A very good question. I think it's circumstantial, really, isn't it? If it was the Liverpool of a few seasons ago, you'd be mortified even to have won it. But this year, considering how topsy-turvy Liverpool have been, you've got to be happy with that, haven't you? Especially with how close you came to losing it and how close you came to drawing it. And you really can't afford to drop points when you're in that cluster in the middle of the table at the moment. So if I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be quietly content with it. As for the game, I mean, it's exactly why we love the Premier League. It's not because it was full of quality. It was because it was so devoid of quality that we got so many goals, and it was so ridiculous and back and forth. But I don't think anyone would have had 5-4. I mean, that's going to have busted quite a few coupons, I think, over the weekend.
Yeah, plenty of coupons for me have been busted this weekend. Less said about that, the better. Yeah. I mean, as a whole, just completely bizarre. Like you say, it's why we love the Premier League, and weirdly, it's the lack of quality that made it such a good game. Norwich, their manager Alex Neil in particular, I was listening to, I think it's Radio 5, and he could not hide his anger, his frustration, his disappointment at his side. When they went 3-1 up, I'll hold my hands up, I thought, that's another really good 3 points for Norwich, and another poor result for Liverpool. If you were in Alex Neil's shoes, what on earth do you say to those players in training today?
Wow. It's a tough one, really, isn't it? Because as players, you want to be in those kinds of situations where you're 3-1 up with Liverpool, and you want to be seeing those out, of course you do. But at the same time, considering how bizarre that game was, I mean, really, I think for me, you just have to chalk it up as one of those days, because every club has them where you just get absolutely trapped. I mean, Liverpool put 6 past us a couple of months back in the Capital One Cup, and that wasn't particularly because we were that bad. It was just one of those days where everything Liverpool seemed to touch went in. And I think it just has to be shrugged off as that for Norwich as well. I mean, you can't dwell on it too much. You've just got to pick yourself up and get on to the next one as quickly as you can.
Yeah, and speaking of picking yourself up, I believe that Christian Benteke owes Jurgen Klopp a new pair of glasses.
Yeah.
He broke his glasses in the celebration. As a sort of, again, Liverpool, it's been well documented. You know, Klopp is working with essentially Rodgers and maybe even prior managers to him with their sort of players. It's not his own team. Just to touch on the dreaded word transfers, there's a lot of talk that Alex Teixeira from Shakhtar Donetsk is a target. if Liverpool sign him, two questions for you: A, does that make a real statement of intent? And B, does it possibly spell the end for the man who breaks glasses?
Yeah, and the man that they just brought in to play
Yeah,
defence and up front in Stephen Corker.
indeed.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that, well, I haven't seen him play. I have to admit that the Ukrainian league is not exactly one I follow, but from everything I've heard, he's a talented player, and he sounds like the kind of player that Klopp would be after. I wouldn't, at least from what I know, I'd probably say he's in the Aubameyang. If I'll say his name, just some reason that's suddenly gone out of my mind.
Spot on.
He's kind of very good. I would say he's kind of in his mould from what I know of him, but having not seen him, I couldn't guarantee that. I think that's one of those signings that other big teams would look at and go, "Oh wow," it's kind of like the Luis Suarez one, where you look at it and go, "It's a good name, it's a good signing. Now let's see if he can settle quickly." But yeah, I'd have to say that if they do get that one over the line before the end of the month, I think they're in a good position. But realistically, you've got to be looking at the back line, haven't you? Because the sheer amount of injuries they've had.
Oof, crikey, yeah. I mean, obviously, like you say, they brought in Stephen Colker, who's a player you'll know well, but you'd think that that another injury they really are screwed. I mean, they're playing Kolo Toure, who's as an Arsenal fan, I can say that I love Kolo, but I think his best years are slightly behind him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Do you foresee that they might get somebody in this window? Do you think Klopp will sort of say, well, let's get through this end of the season and then really go big in the summer?
I think they've got to try, if not just for morale, if no other reason, because Liverpool can't be having 5-4s against Norwich and then 3-3s with this team and 6-1s with this team. It just doesn't fit, and Liverpool fans are going to want something a bit more consistent, something to believe in. But realistically speaking, you've got to wait till the summer to do the major surgery. I think Joel Matip is one of the big signings he wants to make, and that's going to be in the summer. They can't pull that off now. But if you're going to be bringing in Stephen Corkers on loan from QPR, then you need something just to show fans that it's not just cover. We are trying to build something here. So as a statement to the supporters more than anything, I think they've got to at least try.
Yeah, I agree. I think Joel Matip scored today actually for Schalke, who then went on to lose the game, so that bodes well. Um,
Fit right in at
let's
Liverpool then, wouldn't
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think sounds like that might be a free transfer as well. I think he's available on a free at the end of the season, so could be interesting. Let's move away from that epic goal first. Then now this game, or the next game I want to focus on is West Brom Villa. Speaking of coupon destroyers. Now, I think it's fair to say Villa probably were, they've been much better in recent weeks, and they probably deserve to take at least a point, maybe even all three from this game. And there's a shout for a penalty on Jordan Ayew. But their chairman has been very outspoken this week, and in a game where we would struggle to find talking points, why don't you just give us your thoughts on their new chairman's sort of viewpoints that he's put forth in the press this week?
Yeah, there's been some very, very interesting comments in the press. I mean, I was watching Soccer Saturday yesterday, and they mentioned that one of the chairmen said that he wasn't there to point fingers. The new chairman wasn't going to come in and blame people. And Paul Merson made the same point that I was thinking. It was just like, well, shouldn't you be? Shouldn't you be coming in and saying, well, no, that was wrong, that was wrong. Here's where we've gone wrong. Here's who was wrong, and here's how we're going to change it, replace it, whatever. Because that's a poor message to me to be sending out if you're in that much trouble for the new chairman just to come in and say, well, we're not going to blame anyone. Well, no, blame someone. Make some changes. The other issue was that I believe it was Tom Fox, their what is his official title? Is it chief executive?
Yeah, or is he sporting director? Oh, yeah, I'll look that up. Carry on.
One of them. I believe it was him that said we'd wasted 60 million, or it might have even been the chairman, Steve Hollis, that said that we wasted 60 million over the summer, which is another awful message to be sending out to the players that have come in. If you're trying to rally the troops, and I know it's 10 points now, I think the gap between them and safety. If you're trying to rally the troops, you don't just say, "Oh, we wasted our money on you." That's another really hideous gaffe, in my opinion. And the other one is that I can't remember which one it was, but one of them on the board said that they weren't making plans for the championship yet, which I think is a huge, huge mistake, because I'm a massive fan of the championship. It's my favourite division in the world, and I know what the championship summer windows are like when the transfers get going. I mean, before before we start recording this, I was going through a list of players that aren't getting much game time that Aston Villa would probably be interested in going in for. And I'm looking at some of the names on my list. I've got Jordan Rhodes from Blackburn, Hakim Ziyech, who is FC Twente at the moment, Johan Mollo at St Etienne. But you even look at Ravel Morrison, Jamie O'Hara, Tom Cairney. Joey O'Brien, Dwight Gale wants to leave Crystal Palace. Adam Matthews came in from Celtic to Sunderland. He hasn't got a game. Kyle Bartley, Darren Gibson, Aidan McGeady. There's all these players going around. And if you think, if Aston Villa go down and those players are on the market, there's going to be a lot of teams in for them. And especially with the Championship seeing, like, for example, Jordan Rhodes going up for sale, you're going to have Middlesbrough, Derby, Sunderland, and a couple of other Premier League teams that are suddenly going to be interested in him. It's going to be a really, really tough window this year. And Villa need to get in on that quickly. They need to start making plans. But it sounds like the chairman is just like, no, we're just sitting and reviewing at the moment. And I think it's far too late to be reviewing. You need to be moving on to the next stage, because don't we all know that Villa are going down?
It does seem that way, doesn't it? I mean, their form is getting better, but other teams are still winning games, and as long as that happens, they can't, however many points they start to pick up, if the other teams are still picking up points above them, they can't claw that gap away. So I agree. And Tom Fox apparently is listed as executive to Aston Villa, so there we go, we've learned something there. Couple of great shouts there. Molo, I completely agree with. As a fan of French football, I think he would be an excellent shout, particularly with how many players they've got in that sort of department anyway. Bartley, I think, another great shout. Athletic defender. I think it was Paul Merson, funnily enough, mentioned twice now. I think he was saying about a player you'll know well, Ricky Lambert.
Yep.
He said, a player that would just come in, would just play, probably get you goals, and would be a good Championship level player. So,
I mean, there's so many more. I mean, you think of Bolton are probably going down from the Championship this year. I mean, Zach Clough, he's going to have admirers from all over the place. He'd be a fair shout. He knows the league now.
Yep.
Jimmy Kebe, I'm not sure if I mentioned him. He went to Crystal Palace and didn't get a game. He's a big Championship player. There's all these players that are just below the first team of all these big Premier League sides that are going to want to go and look for a game somewhere. If you're Aston Villa, you need to be looking at them, don't you? You need to be thinking how you're going to build a team around. I mean, Patrick Bamford, there's another one. Just gone back to Chelsea on loan from Palace. He did really, really well with Middlesbrough in the Championship last season. For me, I know you can't be signing all these players in January, but you should at least be getting the feelers out and trying to organise a team or seeing what Remy Gard wants to do, because it's far too late to be saying, well, we could stay up now. I think you've got to be putting in plans for the Championship at this stage.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and it's ironic that they played a Tony Pulis side this weekend, and obviously Pulis, not everyone's a big fan, but he just seems to know how to keep teams afloat, whatever happens. And Villa just, I worry. They are a big club, and I'm a massive fan of Remy Gard, and I do wonder if he's almost committed career suicide by going there. But
yeah, I think the other issue Villa have got is, I think it was the chairman again said this week, they're going to keep the players together, and considering how bad they've been this year, that's not the plan. That's what QPR did, that's what Bolton have done, and it just sinks you because you can't afford them anymore, and suddenly no one wants to take them off you.
Exactly, and for one, again, putting my French football hat on, there is no way that Idrissa Gueye, Jordan Amavi and Jordan Ayew are staying in there to play in the Championship. There's just no way that's happening. So, no, interesting. Troubled times for Villa. We shall see what happens with them. Let's shift gears then, and let's stay down at the bottom and focus on that fight. Newcastle had a game this weekend, which I suppose they would look at and think, maybe there was a potential to take some points. Watford were their opponents away from home, albeit, but Watford have been out of form. I think they've lost 4 of the last 5. Yep. They bucked that trend. They came out with the points. It puts Newcastle they're still in the bottom 3 now, and they'll think they're lucky that Norwich and Bournemouth dropped points. What do you make of Newcastle? I mean, obviously they changed a lot of players. They may still be looking to add players. They've got to be adding, surely. They've got to be doing that if they want to stay up, because they still look a side to me that are disjointed. Yeah,
I think the issue you've got with Newcastle is, I'm just looking at the stats on the table now. Scored 25, conceded 41. They're both awful stats. There's some teams you look at. I mean, you take Everton as an example. They've scored 40 goals this season, which is 2 less than Leicester, who are top of the league, 5 less than Man City, but they've let in 34. So you immediately know that clearly there's an issue in the back line. You look at Newcastle and those stats where there's 25 scored, 41 conceded, they're both bad stats. So that team needs wholesale changes, but you can't pull that off in January. There's not that many players going around, and there seems to be a real deficiency in quality centre-backs these days. So I think Newcastle are in for a fight. I think they've got a decent chance as any, because they do have some very good individual quality players, but they need to do something, and they need to start impressing, or at least convince some of the players they've got that this summer they can turn it around. Because if people like Sissoko don't think they're going to be, doing any better than 17th for the next couple of years, then they're going to want to start moving on. And then Wijnaldum wants to start moving. So I think they're in a bit of a tricky spot. They need something fresh in this window. I think Shelvey, to be fair, is a good step towards it.
Yeah, he's done really well, hasn't he? It's 12 odd million quid, but seems to have stepped in, and I think Henri Saivet will be probably pretty decent in the long run. But once again, we've just said it about Villa. I think it's the other way that Newcastle got problems. It's that defensive core, and getting Tim Krul back would be a huge bonus. Although in fairness, Rob Elliott's done pretty well. So
yeah, you would have to say he's probably in as good a shout as Krul is when he comes back for the shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting. And they, I'm right in saying they played Lascelles yesterday, didn't they? The boy
yes,
from
he did. I think he scored a goal as well, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. There we go, knowledge. And again, the aforementioned 3 mentions for Paul Merson now. I think he called him Lechellis or something. Yeah. Bless him. God bless him. He's like the Danny of Soccer Saturday. And just touching on Watford, I mean, they'll be happy to get the points in this game, won't they? I mean, I think it's safe to say they're not going to be fighting relegation, but Quique Sanchez-Flores, who himself is looking to add some players, I think he'll be fairly sort of pleased that Watford have got back on the winning habit. Do you back them for a mid-table finish?
Yeah, I think they're probably in there with the cluster like Crystal Palace and Everton that are going to have these patches of bad form, like Southampton did. But the first pod we'd lost, God knows how many. It was 1 win in 10, and then this podcast starts, and suddenly we've won 3 on the bounce. But this is what the league is like at the moment. You go on this awful run, and then suddenly things turn around, and you're back within 4 points of the top 4. So I think Watford are pretty safe from where they are. I don't think they're going to have too many problems this year.
No, I'm inclined to agree with you there, and they've played some pretty good stuff as well. Actually, I think the biggest test for them will be how they can hold on to these players, particularly Ighalo in the summer. We shall see. Long way away, doesn't it? Fear it with the weather at the moment. Let's give you some fun, shall we? Let's talk Southampton and Manchester United. Now, it was a game that once again another coupon buster, and a game that Manchester United surely would have come into thinking that, with Southampton's patchy form away from home, surely it was an opportunity. However, as you said, since this podcast has started, 3 wins on the spin for the Saints, and certain C. Austin popping up with the winner. Give us your thoughts on the game from your perspective, and also you want to just have a chat about the Austin deal.
Yeah, the thing about the game was that it was awful. It was the first time I've seen Man United for all 90 minutes, and I think I said on our WhatsApp group, I think the home fans pay to see the away teams when they go to Old Trafford, because United were awful again. Only 1 shot on target, I think, which was Daley Blind from like 25 yards out on the 25th minute, something around that age. It was a really, really awful game, but Southampton looked the better, the more threatening. We didn't have too many chances, and God knows Sadio Mane should have put his away, but he's still not in the best of form lately. But yeah, the goal, I mean, I think everyone could have seen it coming as soon as Charlie Austin got off the bench, that he was going to do something like that. And it was a great free kick from Ward-Prowse, and a very good header as well from Charlie Austin. The thing I wanted to say about the Charlie Austin deal was that the price they're quoting is 4 million, and Matt Latiz said yesterday he's led to believe it's actually a bit less than that. Considering he was 15 million, or that was the valuation last summer, I'm inclined to believe that the Steven Corker deal that took him away from Southampton and off to Liverpool probably paid for a couple more million onto that deal, because when we loaned Steven Corker, we had to pay QPR whatever it was. I think it was 5-6 million ish to take him on loan, and we had to pay all of his wages for the duration of the loan. What I can only imagine has happened here is that Liverpool have come to QPR and said, we want to take Steven Corker on loan. QPR have said, that's absolutely fine. You pay us a fee and go and talk to Southampton, and if they're happy with it, you can have him. We've said, yep, he's not getting a game. We haven't been overly impressed with him. He doesn't fit into our style. You can have him. But there's still £4 million of a loan fee that we've got to pay, and we don't deserve to, because he's now going. So I think what's probably happened is either we've said to QPR, okay, you keep the 4 million for Corker, and we give you another 4 million, and now we take Austin. Or Liverpool have said, okay, we'll pay off the rest of your loan deal, gave them that to QPR, and then we've said, okay, now let's do a deal for Austin, because a drop of 11 million when he's actually been scoring really, really well, like 15 goals, I think it is, in the Championship this season, that's silly. I think there's got to be something more to it, and I don't think it's coincidence that Monday we were letting Steven Corker go, and then Saturday we were bringing in Charlie Austin.
Yeah, like you said, it seems like the reports seem a little bit off to me. I did like his. I don't know if you had his comments. I think he gave to Football Focus where he was sort of talking about the people that had written him off, and he was saying about the David Gold comments and whatnot. And he gave a little cheeky smirk. He's like, "Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to playing West Ham. I think it's next week, isn't it, that you play them? So, or the week after the cup games. So it's he's a goal scorer, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, I have to say, I will take my cap off and say I apologise, but I did say on our other one of our other mediums that I wouldn't have had him at Arsenal purely because I don't think he would suit our style, and I'm not sure that he's quite top level, if to use a Harry Redknappism. But
I mentioned
as
that name.
he yeah, indeed. But as he rightly said, you know, he had offers from clubs, and Southampton is a big club and a club that is going somewhere. And as you said yourself, with Mane and others not particularly shining of recent weeks, he might well get you the goals that see you shoot up the table. So I'm sure you'll be hoping so anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to put this kind of burden on him so early, but he does have the hallmarks of a Ricky Lambert at the moment because he's got such a good conversion rate. We picked him up on such a cheap little deal, and he's also got the rags to riches background as well. So I'm not going to overhype him yet, but I think he's a brilliant signing, and added that to Stephen Corker going on Monday, and then Fraser Foster coming back on the Wednesday for the game against Watford, then Charlie Austin coming in, and now the run we're on. It's been a very good couple of weeks for Southampton.
Yeah, he's as you said, forced to return. It's no coincidence. Is it 3 clean sheets in 4,
Yep.
something like that now?
And
Yeah,
not one save to make realistically from Foster. He hasn't had to dive for anything. So
there you go. Organisation goes such a long way with again, Peter Cech with us has proven that. It just goes a massive amount of distance in the long run if you've got an organised goalkeeper organising a defence.
yeah, Lord knows that Stekelenburg didn't organise anything when he was in goal for us.
Yeah.
So.
No, definitely not. And just quickly on Southampton to finish off there, do you expect any more ins and outs? Would you like to see any more ins and outs before, what, are we a week away from the dreaded deadline?
The only out I'm expecting is Gaston Ramirez. He's out of contract in the summer, and there's a lot of talk about him going to Bologna in Italy, which wouldn't surprise me because I think that's where we got him from in the first place. But he's not settled in very well. He's not done very well since he's been here, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. Otherwise, it might just be a loan here or there. The Shane Long to Liverpool story, it makes sense, but I don't believe it for a single second. So I wouldn't expect too many outs. The only ins that we've had rumoured were Sam Byram, who's just gone off to West Ham, and Lucas Ocampos, who I can't think of where he plays off the top of my head now, but
Marseille.
But I'm sure you're in a better position to talk about him than I am because I don't watch French football. But he's the only other rumour, but apparently that's going to be one more for the summer. So personally, I think this is where our transfer deadline day ends unless Gaston or any youth players decide to go out on loan.
Yeah, Gaston Ramirez. I remember when he was signed, it was such a big deal for the club, and lots was expected. And then he went. Did he go on loan to Hull? Am I right?
Yeah, he went on loan last season.
Yeesh, yeah, what a waste of talent. But yeah, you're right. I know Campos. Yeah, I could see it in the summer, but he got an ankle ligament injury 2 weeks or so ago, and he's still recovering. So I'd be surprised if he moved in this window. But Marseille are traditionally a club that like to shove people in and get people out. So you just never know what might happen at that club. To be fair, right. Let's have a look at another fixture then. Let's talk about Palace and Spurs. Now, this game will probably be remembered for a pretty spectacular goal. I'm probably a little bit biased, so I'll let you talk on this one. But coming from behind to win, as much as I might not want to admit it, Spurs seem to be nudging their way into this title race. What did you make of their performance? Because they showed real grit, determination to get back into the game, and then showed a togetherness to keep it and go on to get the victory. It's a massive result for them. And what did you make of that goal as well?
Well, the goal was pretty incredible. I don't want to start getting on the Dele Alli bandwagon just because of it, but yes, it was a very very good goal. As for the win, it's one of those games that you really had to dig in because it looked like a 0-0 from the first few 20 minutes or so. Neither team really looked like they were going to break anything, so I wouldn't have been too astounded to have seen that end 0-0 or just for that own goal from Vertonghen to have sealed it. I think it was a classic Pochettino kind of win where it didn't look good at all for a few minutes, and then it was just no, keep going, keep going, keep going, and then suddenly one goal and the game opens up and Tottenham break through. But realistically speaking, is that going to be a result that's going to push them into the top four? Is that going to be a result that's going to be remembered in the top four? I wouldn't imagine so. It's one of those games they really should have been winning. So I think it's a very good win for them, but realistically speaking, it's one they should have already been making, especially on the run Palace have been on lately.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll take my Arsenal hat off for a minute. I mean, credit where credit's due. I think Pochettino is a very good manager. I think there's two problems. I think one is that the better he does, all the good work he does at Spurs will attract potentially bigger jobs. Sorry for any Tottenham fans listening, but there are bigger clubs, and that would be a concern for me. And I also I can't help but thinking whether this is me hoping or whether it's truth, but 2 injuries in that side and they're in real trouble. I mean, Harry Kane or either of their defenders or Ali in the midfield gets an injury, I think they're in real trouble. Just not sure they've got what it takes to cover those injuries, but we shall see. Again, pains me to say it, but I do think they will end up in the top 4 this year. So we shall see.
Yeah, I think they're one of the tidiest teams actually. From just look at the starting 11, I think they got one of the best starting 11s in the league this season. So it's just the bench and downwards that I'm not totally convinced, but we'll just have to see how they go.
Yeah, agreed. And credit where credit's due. Ali has had a very impressive first half of the season, or 2/3 of the season, and he does look a huge talent. I would just reserve judgment maybe for a year or two, 18 months, just to see if this is consistent.
Yeah, I think the issue you're going to have is that obviously this year is the Euros, and there's going to be
absolutely
a lot of hype around him when this season ends. But like I say, I don't want to get on his bandwagon just yet. I'd rather see where he is at the end of the season before we start thinking about taking him with us and starting him or whatever the national debate is at the time.
Yeah, here, absolutely. We all know that one player's good form between now and the end of the season, it will all be he's the greatest player in the world instead. So we shall see. What do you make of Palace? Particularly, Alan Pardew has made it very plain that he wants a striker. Nicholas Bentner, Adebayor, Loic Remy. There's been quite a lot mentioned. What do you think that is all they're away from being a consistent side again? Because they seem to have fallen off the pace a bit. And these flying wingers are great, but not when they get found out and marked out the game.
Yeah, I think the other issue they've got is the back line is getting a bit older now as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of Ward and Delaney, who are in their back line, but they're not going to be around forever. So yeah, I think they don't need major surgery, but they do need a bit here and there. They do need a bit more magic, especially up front in the midfield, because I'm a big fan of Punchin. We had him at Southampton for a few years, and I know what he's capable of, but he's not exactly an Alexis Sanchez who's just going to open up a game ad lib every week. They do need a little extra something, and yeah, if they want a striker, fantastic, but is Adebayor or Bednar really the answer to that? Probably not. You've got to think more realistically, and you've got to be thinking of a Loic Remy personally.
Yeah, I think Remy he does seem to be a good fit there, doesn't he, with Pardew at Newcastle and whatnot. He does seem to be a player who needs games, but I wonder if that hinges on Chelsea maybe coming in and hijacking the Liverpool deal for Teixeira, who apparently they're interested in him as well. We shall see, because let's be completely honest, they're not going to play Patrick Bamford, are they?
No,
bless them.
No, it's a real shame because he's a very good player as well, but.
Yeah, I think he will go out on loan somewhere else, as you said earlier.
If it wasn't for the fact that Palace had just sent him back, I would have said, Patrick Bamford's probably a good shout for you as well, but there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. That move seemed to fit, didn't it? It really did. It just hasn't worked out for whatever reason. Let's have a look at Sunderland and Bournemouth. Now Bournemouth went in front early in this game, and we're looking good for the points. Benik Afobe getting another goal. It's got to be a good piece of business. And Patrick Van Aanholt, who seems to be scoring more goals than he did anywhere else from left back, which is bizarre. Got the equaliser right on half time. Is this a point gained for Sunderland or 2 points lost?
I think every point's a point gained. It doesn't matter how many they're winning by or losing by. I think every point's a point gained for Sunderland, because there's a lot wrong with that team as well. I mean, 46 goals conceded, that's hideous, especially for a Sam Allardyce team. I think it'll be Bournemouth that'll probably look at that more and say, well, that's points dropped, because they would have looked at that and said, yeah, we should be winning that, or at least we've got a good chance of winning that. But for Sunderland, I think every point is priceless at this stage.
Yeah, agree. And Bournemouth, are you on the sort of in the mindset that they'll drift away and fall into that bottom three at the end of the season, or do you think they've got enough to stay up?
I'm actually more concerned about second season syndrome for Bournemouth. I think they'll be all right this year, personally. I think it's next year they're going to be struggling because they're going to be in a catch-22 of do we carry on trying to improve and spend some more money, or do we just make sure that we're safe and look at the back line and just stay up for another year? Because the third season is generally where you start to realise whether a team's going to be moving up or moving down the league. So I think they'll be okay this season. I certainly think there are worse teams going around than Bournemouth, but I think it's next year they've got to be wary of.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Am I right in saying you've got them in the cup next weekend?
We're out of the cup. It's Portsmouth that have.
Oh, Portsmouth, of course it is. Sorry, how much is a rub in was that? Sorry, I do apologise.
No,
I knew it was one team down on the south coast. Okay, sorry about that. What about Leicester? As far as the 3 o'clock games, wrapping these up goes, so they are now top of the table after today's results, which we'll touch on in a second. They're 3 points clear. They have been linked with. They brought in a Marty this week. They've been linked with Dumbia, sort of to add to their striking options. They pretty much took Stoke to pieces, and Jamie Vardy back on the score sheet as well, which will be a boost for them. They aren't going away with no other commitments. Should we really be taking them seriously now? They're 3 points clear at this stage of the season with 12 or 15 games to go. They're right in this, aren't they?
I'm a very, very dry football supporter when it comes to positions on the table, and I've always maintained that it doesn't matter if you are first after like 5 games or with 5 games to go. You're in the title race no matter what. If you're first after the first game, then you're still in it, as far as I'm concerned. So for me, Leicester have been right in this for as long as they've been in the top four for the entire season. Looking at them now, you've got to take them more seriously, and any of the doubters have got to start taking them more seriously. But just like I say, I'm very, very dry when it comes to the table. If you're in the bottom five, you're in a relegation fight. If you're in the top five, then you're in a title hunt. So for me, there was never any doubt. But yeah, I mean that win against Stoke, I don't think anyone predicted 3 against Stoke, because I know they're adapting their style, but no one puts 3 past Stoke these days. So yeah, I think that was a big win and another good statement from Leicester.
Yeah, absolutely. I know they've got to play. I think they've got to play Arsenal away. They've got to play Man City at home. I think they're home to Liverpool next week. It's going to be a big sort of month or so. But yeah, I mean, you just keep on going. Do you hand on heart then, going into April? Do you still think that they are within 2 points, if not top themselves? Do you think they're within that 2 or 3 point radius by then?
It's a tough one, because everything you know about the Premier League says no, they'll drop away. We have a hierarchy in the Premier League, and it shouldn't be interrupted. But at the same time, there's part of you that just wants to see it. You know, there's so many good clubs that could be in and around the top four this season. I mean, I know Southampton fans are suddenly starting to think, well, why couldn't we get Champions League? I know West Ham have been saying it all season. Stoke and Palace and Watford have been tipped for it. So what's stopping Leicester winning the title? You know, if I had to say whether they'll be up there in April, I'd probably say no. But that's only because I'm a pessimist when it comes to this stuff. I fully expect Arsenal and Man City to wake up in the run-in and blow Leicester out of the water. But at the moment, they're still right in it, and they have to be considered in the title hunt for me.
Yep, fair comment. And speaking of sides that need to wake up, you touched nicely there into the evening game, which was Manchester City and West Ham. Ended 2-2. It was, from what I can gather, a thrilling game. I hold my hands up. I was busy watching another channel and another game between two close rivals in Dortmund and Mönchengladbach at the time. But it was a 2-2 game. City again getting out of jail late. Sergio Aguero getting the late goal. They look like a side to me, Man City, that the away form is going to have to get better if they're going to go on a sort of a run. Do you sort of think that their issues? Do you think it's just away from home? Do you think that almost teams are looking at them now and thinking we can get at these at home?
Yeah, I think everyone sees Man City as a good scalp now, but I think their issue is that they've lost so many points to clubs that they really should be waltzing through. So every time you go to Man City, there's a feeling of, right, we're either going to nick it 1-0 or they're going to, wake up and they're going to thrash us. So I think they're a very strange club in the Premier League. Is that any day of the week they could turn up and put 6 past anyone, but just as equally they could put, or have 6 put past them, because they really can be that left and right sometimes. But I think the other issue is that there's just so much what's the word I'm looking for? Inconsistency, I suppose, around the manager as well. One week, he's going to be there for another couple of years, and he's thinking about signing a new contract. And the next minute, Pep Guardiola's definitely going in there. I think it just feels a bit transitional to me. I think that's the issue they've got at the moment. I think they need to just decide who's doing what in the summer, and then start making some plans about who's staying, who's going, and probably next year they can be a bit more consistent and structured.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that. I was wondering about the managerial situation and whether it affects them or not. It must be tough, whatever anyone says, it must be tough for Pellegrini knowing that there's all this talk around his job and he's just trying to focus the players while the players are thinking, well, you're not going to be here next year. It's got to have some sort of effect, and be interesting to see if they can get on a run. And we should give credit to West Ham. Struggled at home at the start of the season. We're winning away, but their record against the top 3 or 4 sides, if you include Chelsea as a former one of those, it's pretty good this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been pretty fantastic. I'll have to admit that I'm not West Ham's biggest fan. There's a lot about West Ham that irks me sometimes, but what they've been doing recently with the big teams at least has been brilliant. I think the issue they've got is the smaller ones. The games they should be getting points from, or the games that you look at and think, well, you should be winning that. For some reason, they're getting really scrappy and they just can't seem to find a way through. But at the same time, they're up in 6th. I can't dig them out too much for some of the points they've dropped, and especially with some of the teams they've beaten, they've been good value for money this season.
Yeah, and as Mikel Antonio, who's down there from Forest, since he's come into the team, it seems to have, it just seems to have changed their attacking ideas. He was good at Forest last. Did you see much of him when he was down there?
I saw him at Forest, and we also had him on loan at Southampton in 2009, I believe it was, because he scored in the Johnson's Paint Trophy final for us as well. From what I've seen of him from then and the time I saw him at Nottingham Forest, the thing about him that I really like is not only is he a very direct runner, but he's also got the bulk to push people out of the way and shrug tackles off. So if you give him the ball and let him go for it, then he will get a couple of yards up the pitch and people won't be able to catch him. They won't be able to hold him back, and then suddenly it opens up space and opportunities flourish. I mean, when we played them December time, the run for his opening goal, he shrugged off God knows how many players, and no one could seem to keep up with him, and no one wanted to throw a leg in just in case, because he's just that kind of player. So I've been impressed with him. I've always thought he has the ability to make it a big club. It's always kind of annoyed me that we didn't pick him up and keep hold of him, but I think West Ham's a very good fit for him at the moment. I think he's at least doing better than Victor Moses is, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he seems a player who's found his feet, certainly. Let's move on to today's games then. Today being Sunday, of course, recording for the Monday listeners. But we saw Everton and Swansea in the early game, and a win for Francesco Guidolin under his reign for Swansea. Roberto Martinez left to rue yet another home defeat. It's 3 draws and 2 defeats in the last 5 for Everton now. What do you make of Everton? I mean, they've got so many good players, particularly going forwards, which might be the problem. What do they look at this season? They're down in 12th.
Yeah, I think like I said earlier, I mean, they've scored 40 goals, which is only 2 less than Leicester, but they've conceded 34. They've got to be looking at that, because that's ridiculous. I mean, they've only won 6 games this season, which is the same as Norwich, the same as Bournemouth, and the same as Swansea, which might surprise some people. The sheer amount of points they've dropped in draws is silly. So I think for them it's another transitional season. But I think the other issue they've got is that Roberto Martinez, for all the good attacking qualities he brings to a team, all he's really done is turned Everton into a bigger version of Wigan, where it's one style, one approach, go for it. Some weeks it'll pay off, some weeks it won't. And for Everton, that's just not good enough.
Very damning, but very true. I think that's a very, very good shout. I wonder if any Evertonians listening would agree. I suspect they might. Big win for Swansea, though. That win alone has catapulted them sort of, I wouldn't say clear, but they're up to 15th now on 25 points, which is 4 points clear of the drop. Do you suspect they'll be okay? There's still a lot of talk about Gomis, about Ayew, who got what turned out to be the winner today. Do you think they need to retain those sort of players if they're going to get out of this, or are you confident they have enough?
Well, if you'd asked me last week, I would have said they're going down. But I think the appointment of the new guy, who I've never known before, I didn't know anything about him, but apparently he had a very good track record at Udinese, if nowhere else. If it was just Alan Curtis, I think that was his name, wasn't it, Alan Curtis? If it was
Yeah.
just him in charge for the rest of the season, I would have said they're going down with Villa, and Sunderland would be my picks. But I think with the new guy in charge, they've got as good a shot as anyone now. I think they're going to be a bit more stable going forward.
Yeah, I think the same. And I know John, part of our European crew, Mr. John Welsh, I'm sure he'll touch on Guidolin in tomorrow's pod, so we'll be sure to bring that up. But yep, I think Swansea certainly a good start. Winning away from home is always a good thing to do, especially in that position. And speaking of winning away from home, as much as it pains me to talk about this game, Arsenal 0, Chelsea 1 was the final game of the weekend, and Chelsea up to the heady heights of 13th now with that win. I jest, of course, but how much of a setback to you do you think this is for Arsenal? I always sit in the positive side of things. I always look at things and think, well, we're still up there. We're 3 points off the lead. The momentum's still with us to take this title if we want it enough. Do you think this is a huge setback, or do you think it's something we can bounce back from fairly quickly?
I think it's a blip, personally. I mean, as a fan of a quote unquote smaller team, I look at some of the hissy fits that fans of the bigger clubs throw and think, wow, if that's the kind of problems you've got, then that's brilliant. I think Arsenal losing 1-0 to Chelsea isn't title damning, especially when the only contenders above you are Man City and Leicester. And Man City have been just as flip-floppy as Arsenal have, and Leicester have to fade away at some point, you'd like to think. So I'm not of the school of thought that that's a huge result for Arsenal. I mean, that could be the last game you lose all season. So I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be.
No, I wish more of our fans were like you, to be fair. I have to ask you this, actually, for all of our Arsenal fans listening in. I'm always intrigued by this. As a fan of a different side, as a Southampton fan, how do you look at our supporters? How do you view our support base? Do you look at us and think, well, we're not much worse than any other club, or do other fans of other clubs look at our guys and think, Jesus, are they at it again?
Yeah, I'm going to annoy some Arsenal fans here, I think. I think you've got to look at it at a certain different angle. Is that if you think of Chelsea fans this season, or if you think of Man United fans during the Moyes era, especially the start of the Van Gaal era as well, you look at those kinds of fans and you say, wow, you are kicking off about not a lot, because Man United have had this monopoly on football in England for so long, and you kind of have to realise that when Sir Alex Ferguson goes, things are going to change. And okay, Chelsea had a really bad season this year, but does it deserve some of the ridiculous things that Chelsea fans were kicking off about and saying this season? Probably not. It's just a bad year. The issue that Arsenal have is that you had the perfect season, was it 10, 13 years ago now, where you had the whole season unbeaten and you won the league. So anything less than that is now going to be a problem, because you've known perfect football. You've known the perfect season. And to have anything less than that is going to be tricky. Yes, Arsenal fans have a bit of a reputation, especially in my eyes, of throwing their toys out of the pram over not a lot. But at the same time, I completely understand where you're coming from, because when you've known that for a year, then of course everything else is going to feel awful. It's going to feel tainted in comparison. So I would say, yeah, Arsenal fans do have a bit of reputation, especially with some of the Wenger out campaigns. I mean, that happens every single year, and it's never going to happen. So there are times when you look at Arsenal fans and go, oh man, just stop. If this is the biggest problem you've had 10 years without trophy, then you haven't known pain in football. So there is a certain degree of that, but at the same time, it's all relative. As an Arsenal fan, like I say, you've had the perfect season. Anything less is going to feel really, really difficult to get used to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And don't get me started. I think somebody posted something very good on Twitter earlier on. They were saying that Arsenal win and it's we should be top, and Arsenal lose and it's manager out, sack the board, sell the players, burn the stadium down. So, there's just no in between. As an Arsenal fan, it'd be interesting to see. But like you say, I'm with you. I think it is a blip, and it's just a question of whoever wants it most right now is going to win this title.
One other thing I would add to the Arsenal game, because I watched it today, the one other thing I would add is that it could be a blessing in disguise for you to have lost Mertesacker for the next couple of games, because I remember the Southampton game where we beat you 4-0, and it was Mertesacker that cost you that game, with Shane Long and Sadio Mane and whoever else running him absolutely ragged. I think a couple of games without Mertesacker is going to do Arsenal the world of good, and I think that back four is going to look a bit more shored up. There's going to be a lot less to work with for other teams, so I think that could very well be a blessing in disguise.
I know at least two people that will be sing along listening to that. But I'm a Mertesacker fan. I totally understand why people say that, though. I do totally get your point. And as much as the contact was exaggerated today,
Oh, he went down like a fish, didn't he?
yeah.
It's incredible.
Oh, it was like he was stiff in midair as he hit the deck. It was really bizarre. It's like I don't know if you've seen that video of that team in Finland that do the celebrations where they sort of, and the guy pretends to be a fish and he was like that bouncing along the floor. It's just totally bizarre. But that is Diego Costa. You know what you're going to get, and that's the way he plays the game. So
he's good fun for me. I know he's not exactly fun for other people, but yeah, good entertainment value.
Have to say I'm not a fan, but I totally get what you mean. Let's just draw a line under the Premier League then. So the table as it stands, so Leicester are 3 points clear at the top with City and Arsenal on 44 points, second and third respectively, or joint second, whichever you prefer. Spurs closing the gap to 42 points in fourth. Manchester United slipped to fifth, although weirdly they actually go up in the table after West Ham's draw, who leaves them in sixth. Liverpool up to seventh. Southampton, your beloveds, are in eighth, with Stoke and Watford making up the top 10. And then the bottom five, as it stands, Villa bottom, looking in real trouble, 13 points. 19 and 19th are Sunderland at 19 points, that is. Newcastle, their rivals, just above them on 21 points and 18th. And then Norwich on 23 and Bournemouth in 16th on 25, level with Swansea. So, interesting. Quick look at the goal scorers as well. Jamie Vardy still leads the table as far as goals, 16 Premier League goals. Romelu Lukaku on 15, Odion Ighalo 14, Harry Kane on 13 with Riyad Mahrez, and Sergio Aguero and Olivier Giroud both on 12 make up the top end of the table for goal scorers. Before we take a couple more questions and then wrap things up, I just want to touch on the Championship. As you said, it's a league you watch a lot of, so I want to sort of give you an opportunity to talk Championship each time you're on. I'm just going to turn it over to you. Who would you like to put the focus on this week?
Oh wow! Give me the easy questions, don't you? I mean, there's so many good. I mean, part of me wants to say Birmingham because of how well Gary Rowett's doing. Part of me wants to say Sheffield Wednesday. I think if this is my first of these, I'd probably have to say Hull. Now they're back at the top of the league. They've been a bit of a strange side to have gone down from the Premier League, because they've essentially kept the same team, shuffled out one or two, and then just brought in a couple. They haven't done major surgery, but it's worked so well, and all season long they've looked like a very, very good team. I should also say Brighton and Hove Albion, who have turned around a very bad run of form lately. Suddenly they're back up in third. They're back in with a shout. I mean, there's far too many good teams to single out one. But I think if anything has to be said about the Championship, it's got to be a shout out to David Button, the Preston goalkeeper, who pulled off probably the best save I've ever seen this weekend.
It was unbelievably good, and I'm sure Ross will tweet that out, and we'll tweet it from our podcast account later on tonight. It was an absolutely stunning save. It really was, has to be said. I'll just pick out a couple for you. Charlton, we've discussed. I think we discussed them briefly on the last Breakfast Show a couple of weeks ago. But they held a protest after the game, after the final whistle of yesterday's game, and I believe that the chant was "We want our club back." It's a really sad state of affairs for both them and indeed Bolton, which we'll touch on another week. But what do you make of this Charlton situation? I mean, can you see anything changing as long as that ownership is there?
I'd like to say yes, because I do like Charlton. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Charlton. But I think it was pointed out again by Paul Merson on Soccer Saturday that Jose Riga is one of the former managers of Standard Liège as well. And the owners own Standard Liège or have a stake in them as well. If you're asking if things are going to change, if they're bringing in managers from other clubs that they also own, I mean, he's also been with Charlton before under them as well. They seem to just be sticking with what they know, what they think, and it's clearly not working. It's a very strange situation with Charlton, and I think the issue, realistically speaking, is that there's no identity to them anymore. You just don't know what kind of style they play. I couldn't name any of the players off the top of my head, except for Reza Gujinajan, just because that name's ridiculous. So I think there's a lot of cosmetic surgery to be done with Charlton, but the issue is that if they carry on the way they're going, they're going to be in a Blackpool situation at the wrong end of the League One next season.
Yeah, it's real shame, and like you say, they're a proper sort of family club, and I can't see anything changing right now. And they got, I think was it a draw with Blackburn? Yeah, draw yesterday.
I was just looking at the bottom of the table. I think that's also a standout result because they've just lost 5-0 and 6-0 to who's at Huddersfield and Hull the last couple of weeks. So 1-1 with Blackburn is a very good result for Charlton.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's tough for them. I think there's isn't there a program? Oh, there's a couple of games midweek, and then you've got the normal program after the FA Cup. So, yeah, it's a tight league. Promotion wise, I do just want to quickly touch on Sheffield Wednesday. Actually, I was chatting to our interview we did with Natalie Dean a while ago, and she's obviously a big Sheffield Wednesday fan, and she was sort of saying the momentum is definitely with them. They got a 1-1 draw at Reading yesterday. Do you think they could be the side that sort of do that playoff run, or do you think it's Birmingham, maybe Ipswich, maybe Forest, sort of who are unbeaten in 5? Is there any that stand out, or would you say Wednesday are that
I think
team?
it's got to be Wednesday. I mean, if you had to pick one, it'd be Wednesday. The only other one I can think of realistically is Birmingham, because they are also another really, really good team in that division. And I think whichever one of those miss out, because I think the top 6 that you've got at the moment are probably going to be the top 6 you'll end with, unless Derby throw it away like they have been doing in recent seasons. Whichever one of Wednesday or Birmingham miss out this year, I think they'll be right in the mix for automatic next season. I think the thing that gives Sheffield Wednesday the slight edge is that they've just brought in Gary Hooper on a permanent now, and he's been very good for them as well. He's really settled in with Barry Bannan and some of the other wingers they've got in there. So I think they're not so much a dark horse, because they just seem favourite every time they walk into a game. But I remember when we were down there, we were first for like most of the season, if not all of it, and then out of nowhere, with like 10 games to go, Reading just surged up the table, and they didn't lose for the rest of the season, and they nicked first. Sheffield Wednesday could very, very easily do that if they really wanted to. So big club. I think they've got a big future ahead of them.
Yeah, Danny was saying that recently. He was actually saying that if they could get Gary Hooper, that could be the difference between getting promoted and sort of just staying in the playoffs. So yeah, good shout, Danny.
I do have to say on Wednesday, right, actually, the new crest isn't the prettiest in the world.
Yeah, no, it's a bit Hogwarts, isn't it?
It's a little odd to look at, but there you go.
Yes. I might tweet that one up later on actually as well. I'm going to get you to put your head on the block here, and every time we talk Championship, I'm going to ask you to refer back to this. Pity. So make a list. I'm not going to ask you to name who wins the league or anything. I just want you to give me the 3 teams each time we do this that you think are most likely to be in the Premier League next year. So it doesn't have to be the winners or anything, just the 3 teams you expect to go up.
Well, Hull and Middlesbrough, I think are probably going to be in it for most of it, unless one of them has a really, really bad blip. But there's about 5, 6, 7 teams that could very realistically get in that top spot, and then when it's in the playoffs, you never know. I think QPR proved that a couple of seasons ago with Zamora's last-minute goal. So, my head says Derby. No, it doesn't. It says Burnley. Yeah, my head says Burnley. My heart says Sheffield Wednesday. But that's gonna change a lot. If I had to put 3 now, it would be Hull, Middlesbrough, and Burnley.
It is tough. I did spring that on you, granted, and just to play the game with you, I'm going to say Hull, Derby, and Sheffield Wednesday.
I think Derby are probably due one at the moment, but they just seem to have a habit of throwing it away. So.
Yeah, they certainly need to with the money they've spent. Christ on a bike, yeah. That's and my dark horse maybe Ipswich.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ipswich have been doing it for so long now. They've built a really, really good team, but there's just so many that could just slip past them.
Yeah, and it'd be good to see Mick McCarthy back in top flight. He is, that vine, and never forget of him doing the sort of the look. It's just never gets old. That does never. Okay, so just for our Championship fans, then Hull are top with 56 points. Middlesbrough second, 55 point back. Then you've got Brighton, Derby, Burnley, Sheffield Wednesday currently in the playoff spots, with Birmingham, Ipswich, Cardiff, and Brentford making up the top 10. And then you've got the bottom 3 currently: Bolton and Charlton on 20 and 21 respectively. Bristol City on 24, and then you've got Rotherham, Milton Keynes, Dons, Fulham, and Blackburn making up the bottom 6 or 7. So yeah, it's close. Really, really is close. I think 20 points bottom of the league. And then you've got to go to, is it 26 points difference to 7th? So that sounds like a huge amount, but given the contents, I don't know. It's certainly not. It's certainly not a big jump between 15th place Preston on 35 and Birmingham on 46 and 7th.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean,
close.
I could have a proper discussion about the Championship for hours, realistically, but I think the thing about it is that anyone in that division could turn around and beat anyone 6-0 any given day of the week, which is why I love it so much. So that table could change so quickly.
Yeah, we will definitely focus. I think 1 week when we have a quiet Premier League week. In fact, we might do a little bit next week perhaps because we've got FA Cup games. So we will definitely focus on that. Right then, let's end up with some questions then. First one comes from, there's a couple of Arsenal ones here, but I'm going to give them to you because I would only be biased. But we'll start with the Spurs one. This is from Jansev Shaheen, and he wants to know, without any bias, he puts Danny in brackets mainly, how good is Dele Alli? So you've already said you want to reserve judgment. Do you think he falls into the category that we should keep an eye on, or do you think he falls into the category of let him get on with it, we'll judge him at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think you've got to let him just get on with it, because there's so many examples of young English kids that people focused on too early and then suddenly they faded away. I mean, Wilshere was meant to be our Iniesta and now he's nowhere, and Barkley was meant to be the next best thing and now he's nowhere. So Ali is just one of those next flashes in the pan. I just, for his sake, I hope he carries it on and by the end of the season is ready for a good England run. I think the issue realistically is that if you say, okay, the Euros are starting tomorrow, who do you start as the front four? For me, you'd put Dele Alli in the middle now. But at the end of the season, who knows? Who knows how that's going to change? Because I remember a couple of seasons ago when Ricky Lambert was getting called up, and I think it was Sunderland fans arguing that Connor Wickham should be in the England squad, and if Lambert can get in, why couldn't Wickham? Well, the reason was because Wickham was a flash in the pan. He had a couple of good games and scored some goals, and then he disappeared. Whereas Lambert was consistent. Dele Alli has been good so far, and he's going to be a very good England player. But you've got to see him play for an entire season before you can start touting him for this or that. So, yeah, for me, he's going to be a big player. He's going to be in the team perennially from here on out. But is he as good as that goal made him look yesterday? Probably in a few years, but not today, I don't think.
No, agree. And again, I will just say, yes, very good goal. The only thing I would say, actually two things I would say. One, I'm a little bit biased, but Di Maria's first goal for PSG yesterday
that was
better.
Stunning. I remember seeing that on Twitter.
Oh, what a goal. If you haven't seen it, it's against Angers in the 5-1 win, and he just, the position he puts his body in to hit an outside of the foot volley and the cushion he puts on it with no time to react is sensational. But also, the only other thing I'll say about the Ali goal, yes, fantastic strike. All I would say is when he takes that touch, which granted is a very good touch, he has no other option but to hit that ball. That's the only thing I would say. Whereas Di Maria's particularly, he has no time. He had time to bring it down and assess his options, but he had the technique and the brilliance to do what he did.
Yeah, there was a few comments I saw on Twitter yesterday comparing it to a Dennis Bergkamp goal, which is probably blasphemy for you, isn't it?
I was not happy about that. Less said about that, the better. Right, let's move on to another question. Pete Gooner, is it time to believe Leicester are in the title race? And we've touched on this. He says, I think they are. So I'm going to put you on the block and I'm going to say to you, I'm going to change the question. If Leicester lose to Manchester City and Arsenal, which they've both got to play, I think they've got to play City at home and Arsenal away, do you think they can still win the title by losing those two games? So I'm going to slightly change Pete's question there.
Man, the tough thing is that I remember when we played them a couple of months back, we were 2-0 up by half time, and it was our own fault that we let them win. And that game could have stopped some of the momentum, and Leicester might not be where they are. I mean, I know I'm making Southampton sound like the one club that's now, put Leicester where they are. That could have happened at any point this season. All it took was one bad result, and something could have fallen away, as it has for so many other teams in the league. So yeah, quite possibly if City and Arsenal both turn them over, which is very, very possible, then yeah, maybe it might start the slide. But the issue you've got this year is that there's so many teams in the middle of the table that can just suddenly turn it on and beat anyone, or turn it off and get beaten by anyone, that Leicester could just take advantage of that and stay up there. But yeah, if you were going to say to me now they were going to lose both of those games to Arsenal and to Man City, I'd probably say they're going to start fading away after that.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for the question there, Pete. Even if I did slightly change it. Per asked a quick question at Five All Day. He said, "Did we get did we get El Nene to sit there like the Sphinx of Egypt?" An Arsenal question there. I'll answer that one quickly. I think it's a bit too soon to expect him to have been involved, particularly in games against Stoke away and Chelsea at home, two massive fixtures. But I do think we might be discussing him next week. So I've got a feeling he might play against Burnley in
Yeah,
the
I
FA
think
Cup.
the issue you've got with anyone that's a defensive player is that it's much harder to put a defender in than it is to put an attacker in. So there was no good use in upsetting the balance over the past couple of games. So
No, agree. And all the people giving Matthew Flamini stick. Can you imagine if they'd have put the new boy in and he'd have got roasted? He just couldn't win in that situation. So no, I'm with you on that one. Final couple here then. Per Svensson, Wenger. This is a cheeky one. Wenger never took on his robe today. Is that a good or bad sign? I think he's referring to the coat.
Mhm.
He didn't put the coat on. Bizarre. Again, I'm going to change the question. Does Ronald Koeman have any particular fashion things that your fans A, give a toss about, and B, notice each week?
Generally not. I mean, there's been one or two. I remember the very first game he ever took charge of us at home was a friendly match, I believe, against Bayer Leverkusen, and he came out in what seemed to be golf attire. But aside from that, no, he's generally a suit kind of guy.
He's quite a fashionable chap. I remember when he had his leg in plaster and he was just wearing jeans, wasn't
Yeah,
he,
yeah,
on
he
the
was just kicking
sideline?
it back in the problem.
Just look very cash. You gotta love that. Right, final question tonight then. This is a good one to finish on actually. From Mark at Mark J Boogie, who usually provides a good question or two. Will this season be representative of the future of the Premier League, or is it a one-season thing? So I guess what he's referring to there is the title race, the fact there's some big clubs lower end of the Chelsea situation. What do you reckon? A one-off, or with all this money coming in, is this something we'll see
That's a
again?
very good question.
It is, isn't it?
I'd like to say that this is going to be the future because I think there's a couple of clubs that could have been doing what Leicester have been doing if they could have stayed consistent. I mean, West Ham could be right up there if they were better against the smaller teams. Crystal Palace certainly started very well. They could be up there. I don't think Swansea were a million miles off being in the mid-table. They just took a downturn and here they are. So I'd like to say yes, but I think the real test will be when financial fair play settles down, because that's when you'll start seeing the league split into three divisions, I think. So I'd love to say yes, but my head says that with the way financial fair play is going to be going in the next couple of seasons, it's probably gonna go back to the way it was.
Yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see which teams do what in the summer. Because as you say, we've got the is it £96 odd million deal or something ridiculous if you stay in the Premier League next year. And what with the Premier League dropping their sponsorship from Barclays, they're just going to go as a franchise on their own, which might create even more money. It's just like it's scary, it really is. But ultimately, it depends what managers spend on whom, I guess, because you can have all the money in the world if you don't spend it properly, it's not going to work.
What I would add about the window this year is that I think there's going to be a lot of clubs that are going to have a Southampton circa 2 seasons ago kind of window where suddenly all the good players go, because I think Leicester are in a real trouble of that, and Watford are going to probably be losing Igalo. There's a lot of teams that suddenly think, no, our players want to stay because we're doing well and we're moving up the table. We've made that mistake for the past 2 seasons, and they've always wanted to go, and now we're ready to lose Wanyama and possibly Mane this season. I think there's going to be a lot of clubs that are going to start learning that the top four is the top four, and there are just some things we can't change in the Premier League.
No, I agree. Actually, quickly, final question for me, directly sort of from me to you. As we turn into this transfer window next week, we'll be doing a pod the night the window shuts, which I haven't quite worked out how we're going to structure that yet, but we shall see. If you had to say three clubs, I'm doing it to you again, hitting you on the hip, three clubs that you expect to be busiest on the actual day in the Premier League, who would you think either will be or should be?
Should be. I can already tell you should be. That's got to be Villa, Newcastle, and Sunderland. They've got too many issues to not be doing anything on transfer deadline day. The ones I think will be, you would probably be looking at Swansea, possibly. With the new manager being in, he might want to try and get a couple of deals over the line. I imagine there'll be a lot of phone calls going around at Villa. I'm not sure how they'll get over the line, but I think Villa will be busy. The one I don't want to say, but the one I think I have to say is probably West Ham. Because West Ham, every single time a transfer window comes around, they get stars in their eyes and think, right, let's show people what we can do. I think West Ham will probably be moving a couple of players in or going for a loan deal for Torres or something silly just to show people that they're still in and around. So I'm going to have to go to West Ham personally.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on West Ham. As you say, they just seem to get excitable, don't they? Every transfer window, it's like, oh, we must spend money.
I've got a few issues with West Ham, and I think one of them is that they just seem to see stars in their eyes, like I say, whenever a window comes around. I think it was David Sullivan, wasn't it, on Sky Sports last week, that said, "Oh yeah, we're trying to get a loan deal done for a foreign striker. You wouldn't believe it if we told you." It's like, well, just get it done, and then we'll talk about it. But it just winds me up that teams like West Ham can just go, "Oh yeah, we're a big club now. We're dealing with these players." Well, that means nothing if you can't get it done. Remember when Blackburn were linked with Ronaldinho a couple of seasons ago? It meant nothing because he didn't come. So
No, absolutely, and there's as you say, there's somebody that slipped through the net. It's just be interested to see who actually gets what done. But yeah, like you say, I think when you have a chairman who's on Twitter, I think that's a good starting point. But we shall see. Okay, well, that'll draw a line under this week then. Thank you very much, Ross. I appreciate it's just me and thee, but I think we've managed to cobble together a decent amount of entertainment for our listeners.
I've never spoken and given so many opinions for so long.
It's good, isn't it? It's good. Yeah, it's nice. And obviously we wish Danny well. I'm sure Danny will return next week, and we can talk more and maybe talk about some more transfers that may or may not happen. But we will have you back, Ross. I might, if I can do at all possible, I'll try and get you involved in some sort of transfer pod. We might be doing different days next week, and we might be doing some extra shows. So stay tuned, people. We'll let you know. But if not, I'm sure you will return soon.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much for your time as always.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you very much for all of you, I should say, and all of us for listening. We hope you enjoy your evening stroke breakfast. The normal pod will resume. If you're listening to this on Monday, it will be released tomorrow on Tuesday. If you're listening to this somewhere in the future, it'll probably already be out. But do tune in for that. We'll go through all the major European leagues. As I say, we will just be a European-only pod on the Mondays from now on. So if you want your English fix, this is where to come. And if you want to keep it European, then keep the other pod in mind. Of course, we'd like you to listen to both, so keep doing that. But that's it from us. We will speak to you on the pod, as I say, and thank you very much for tuning in, and we will speak to you very soon.